Under the glow of streetlights, a massive tattooed man steps onto a dance stage. The crowd laughs when he admits, "I used to be a security guard." No one knows he once saved Keanu Reeves' life. And tonight, as the music starts, Keanu is watching from the shadows, about to change everything. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow, we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. Downtown Los Angeles, pulsed with summer heat and restless energy, beneath a web of string lights stretched across the plaza, a crowd gathered for the annual Beat Rebirth street dance competition. Music thumped from giant speakers, bouncing off the concrete walls. Vendors sold cold drinks and neon bracelets, while teenagers filmed everything on their phones, waiting for the next performer to take the stage. The MC, a young man in a bright red jacket, strutted across the phones, platform with a microphone in hand. "All right, LA," he shouted. "You ready to see the next dancer bring the fire?" The crowd roared, stomping feet and clapping hands. "Up next," he continued, "we've got someone new to the scene. Someone who says he's, well, just trying something different tonight. Give it up for Logan Pierce." The name didn't ring any bells. A few people whistled, mostly out of politeness. Then the curtains parted, and a man stepped out, broad-shouldered, heavy-set, maybe in his early 50s. Tattoos curled around his forearms like old maps, his skin sun-worn and scarred. He wore a plain black t-shirt, faded jeans, and sneakers that had clearly seen better days. The chatter in the crowd dimmed for a moment, replaced by murmurs of confusion. "Is this a joke?" someone whispered. "Looks like somebody's dad wandered on stage." A group of young dancers in the front row laughed behind their phones. Logan adjusted his baseball cap and rubbed the back of his neck. He looked more like a bouncer than a dancer, and his size alone made the stage seem smaller. The MC tilted his head, curious, but amused. "Hey man," he said through the microphone. "Before you start, what's your story? What do you do for a living?" The question hung in the air. Logan looked down at the mic stand, hesitated, and then spoke softly. "Used to be a security guard." A ripple of laughter tore through the audience. Someone shouted, "Guess he's guarding the stage tonight." The MC chuckled awkwardly, glancing toward the sound booth. "All right then, folks. A man of mystery and muscles, let's see what you've got, big guy." Logan gave a faint, nervous smile. His eyes drifted across the sea of faces, but he wasn't really seeing them. He was listening to the echoes of his own doubt. The music hadn't even started, and already the crowd had decided who he was. A joke, a relic. Somewhere in the back row, beneath the glow of a single flickering light, a man in a dark hoodie and cap watched quietly. His head was bowed, but his expression was alert, sharp. When Logan stepped into the center of the stage, the man's eyes followed him, and a subtle recognition crossed his face. It was Keanu Reeves. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply watched as the MC signaled the DJ. Logan stood frozen for the first few seconds, like a man trying to remember why he had come here. The lights flashed against his tattoos, casting quick bursts of color across his arms. Then, with one cautious breath, he moved. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't even confident, but it was real. His first steps were slow, deliberate, as if testing the strength of a bridge built long ago. The crowd started murmuring again. A few laughed. One teenager yelled, "Come on, old man, move." The MC smirked, whispering into the mic. Guess he left his rhythm back at the security booth. Logan heard every word, but he didn't react. His jaw tightened slightly. He shifted his stance, letting the bass flow through his chest. Slowly, his movements changed. His shoulders rolled. His arms carved out patterns in the air. There was rhythm there, raw, imperfect, but undeniable. A few people quieted down, sensing something different beneath the awkward start. From the back of the venue, Keanu leaned forward slightly. He recognized that movement, not from a dance studio, but from years ago on a film set, during tactical training drills. Logan had taught him how to flow with motion instead of fighting it, how to keep balance under pressure. And now, the same man was standing under flashing lights, trying to rediscover the rhythm he'd once used to protect others. The crowd wasn't ready for what they were seeing. As the beat quickened, Logan's body began to calm, adapt. He spun once, then dropped low, one knee grazing the stage, before rising into a wave of motion that seemed too graceful for someone his size. The laughter faded into silence. People started recording again, but this time for a different reason. One woman in the front row whispered, "He's actually good." Another replied, "Look at his control. How old is this guy?" The MC's grin faltered. He stepped back, lowering the microphone as the crowd's energy shifted from mockery to curiosity. Keanu's eyes softened. He could see what no one else knew. The man on that stage wasn't dancing for applause. He was fighting ghosts. Shame. Pain. Years of invisibility. Every move was a confession. Every beat, a heartbeat reclaimed. Then the song ended suddenly, a sharp cut of silence. Logan froze, mid-motion, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his temple. For a moment, there was nothing but stillness. Then polite clapping started from the back rows. Quiet, steady. It was Keanu. His hands clapped slowly, deliberately, echoing through the hall. Heads turned, phones lifted. The crowd began to realize who was standing there. The air shifted again, charged and electric. Something was about to happen. A hush fell over the crowd as recognition spread. The man clapping in the back wasn't just another spectator. The cap came off, and the lights caught his face. Keanu Reeves. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. People gasped. Phones flew into the air, and a ripple of astonishment rolled through the plaza. The MC blinked twice, unsure how to handle the moment. "Wait, is that Keanu Reeves?" His voice cracked slightly. The cameras turned toward him, then back to Logan, who stood in the middle of the stage, breathing hard, eyes wide with disbelief. He looked frozen, as if part of him didn't trust what he was seeing. Keanu took a slow step forward, then another, until he was standing just beyond the front row. The noise of the crowd faded behind him, replaced by an odd, collective silence. Then, with a calm strength in his tone, Keanu called out across the stage, "Show them what you taught me, brother. Courage is stepping out of the past." The words landed heavy and clear, slicing through the noise. A wave of emotion swept through the crowd. It wasn't a celebrity stunt anymore. It was something raw, deeply human. People exchanged glances, realizing that this stranger, this so-called joke performer, had a story that stretched far beyond the lights of this stage. Logan swallowed hard. His lips trembled, but a faint smile began to form. He lowered his head slightly, as if acknowledging the man who had just handed him back his dignity. The MC, still caught off guard, raised the microphone again. "All right, folks," he said softly, his tone now respectful. "Let's give Mr. Pierce one more round of applause." This time, the clapping wasn't polite. It was thunderous. The laughter from earlier had vanished. In its place came cheers, whistles, and shouts of encouragement. "You got this, man. Go again." The stage lights shifted, casting a warm golden hue across Logan's frame. Keanu stepped back into the shadows, letting the focus return to the man on stage. His expression was calm but filled with pride. He knew what this moment meant, not just for Logan, but for anyone who had ever walked away from their purpose out of fear or pain. The DJ restarted the track. Logan closed his eyes. The beat rose once more, and this time, He moved without hesitation. His body spoke the words, he couldn't. The camera zoomed in on his face, illuminated with both exhaustion and freedom. From the corner of the screen, Keanu's faint smile lingered as the host declared, "Let's see what this tough guy can do." 15 years earlier, the sun blazed down on a closed film set outside Santa Clarita. The production for The Night Guardian was deep into shooting its most dangerous chase sequence. Keanu Reeves, dressed in a dark tactical suit, stood beside the stunt car, reviewing the choreography with the director. The scene was meant to show his character running between two speeding vehicles before leaping onto a platform. Everything had been tested: angles, timing, and brakes. Standing nearby, keeping a quiet watch, was Logan Pierce. Back then, his shoulders were unscarred, his posture unbroken. He was Keanu's personal security detail, assigned after an incident with an aggressive paparazzi months earlier. To most people, Logan looked like a silent wall of muscle. To Keanu, he was something else: steady, loyal, a man who noticed every detail before anyone else did. Keanu trusted him completely. Between takes, they shared small jokes, trading dry humor about set life. "You ever get bored just standing there all day?" Keanu asked once. Logan replied without missing a beat, "Only when you sit still too long." They laughed. The kind of easy friendship that forms in the shadows of long days and early mornings. That afternoon, something felt off. The temperature was unusually high, making the asphalt shimmer. A few crew members complained that the brakes on the secondary stunt car were heating too fast. The coordinator called for one more test run before the final take. Keanu insisted on running the rehearsal himself. He preferred authenticity. "All right, pictures up," someone shouted. The engines roared to life. Keanu took his mark, standing between two cars angled for the shot. Logan stood just behind the camera, scanning every movement with professional precision. He'd done this 1,000 times before. Watch, anticipate, protect. The director raised his hand. And action! The cars accelerated on cue, engines screaming, tires kicking up dust. Keanu sprinted forward, perfectly timed at first. But a millisecond before the cue to stop, one of the vehicles jolted sideways. The driver lost control. The car skidded off its track, veering directly toward Keanu. Logan didn't think. He moved. 1 second, Keanu was running toward the ramp. The next, he was slammed sideways by a wall of muscle and instinct. The force threw both men to the ground as the car's mirror clipped Logan's shoulder with a sickening crunch. Metal screeched as the vehicle spun out and crashed into a barrier. Crew members screamed. Keanu rolled onto his back, dazed. Dust filled the air. When he turned, he saw Logan lying still beside him, his arm twisted unnaturally. "Logan!" Keanu crawled toward him, panic rising. Logan's face was pale, but calm. He gritted his teeth and whispered, "You're all right. Good." The set fell silent. Keanu pressed a trembling hand against Logan's shoulder, calling for medics. The camera stopped rolling. No one breathed until the sirens arrived. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and Keanu climbed in beside Logan, ignoring the producer's protests. The set blurred behind them as the vehicle sped toward the nearest trauma center. Logan's arm was strapped, his shoulder immobilized, but his expression stayed composed. Even through the pain, he tried to reassure Keanu. "It's just a crack," he muttered. "I've had worse." Keanu looked at him, shaken. "You shouldn't have been the one lying there," he said. "That car was heading straight for me." Logan's lips twitched into a faint smile. "It's my job, boss. You pay me to take the hit if one comes." "That's not what I pay you for," Keanu said quietly. "I pay you to go home safe." The medic between them kept checking Logan's vitals, shaking his head at the deep swelling forming around his shoulder. "You're lucky," the medic said. "Half an inch higher, and that impact would have taken the collarbone clean through." Logan grunted, unimpressed, his eyes already drifting toward the window. In the hospital, the news spread quickly. The stunt had gone wrong, but no lives were lost. Cameras waited outside, eager to capture an image of Keanu visiting his injured guard. He ignored them and slipped through a side entrance, holding a paper bag of food. Logan was awake, propped up against a hospital pillow, watching an old movie on the small TV above his bed. The sling around his shoulder looked oversized, and his face was pale from painkillers. He turned when Keanu entered. "Didn't expect company," Logan said with a dry chuckle. "I brought burgers," Keanu replied, pulling up a chair. Hospital food doesn't count as real food. They ate in silence for a while. Then Keanu leaned forward, his voice low. "I keep thinking about what happened. You didn't even flinch. You just moved." Logan looked at him for a long time before answering. "That's all I've ever known how to do. See danger. Move fast. I didn't think. It's instinct. Instinct or not, it cost you your arm." Logan flexed his fingers, slowly, grimacing. "Doctors say it'll heal, but the nerves, they don't know. They said security work might not be an option anymore." The room went quiet again. Keanu's gaze fell to the floor. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Logan shook his head. "Don't be. I did what I was supposed to do." But there was something in his voice that didn't match the words. Not resentment, but a hollow weariness. He'd spent decades protecting other people, but he'd never learned what to do once the protecting stopped. When Keanu left that night, Logan stayed awake long after the nurses dimmed the lights. The TV kept playing softly, flickering across the walls. Outside, a helicopter cut through the sky, its rhythmic blades echoing like a distant heartbeat. A sound that once meant purpose, now fading into the dark. Weeks passed. The headlines about the accident faded, replaced by new stories and new films. The set of The Night Guardian resumed production, but Logan never returned. His injury healed enough for everyday life. But the doctors confirmed what he already knew: he'd lost the range of motion needed to guard, fight, or react the way he once could. His body had slowed, and for a man whose purpose was protection, that felt like losing his name. Keanu called often. Sometimes Logan answered, sometimes he didn't. When he did, the conversations were short, polite, and distant. "How's the shoulder?" Keanu would ask. "Getting there," Logan would reply. They'd talk about movies, the weather, anything except the truth. Both men knew this wasn't just about an arm. It was about identity. One afternoon, Keanu showed up unannounced at Logan's small apartment in Glendale. The place was tidy but empty. No pictures, no warmth, just a man existing between walls. Logan opened the door with a look of quiet surprise. "You didn't have to come all the way here," he said. "I wanted to," Keanu replied. "You never returned my last call." Logan motioned him inside. The television was on, muted, showing a rerun of an old Western. Keanu noticed a pile of unopened mail on the counter, all from medical insurance companies. He didn't mention it. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Keanu said, "I've got a new project starting next month. If you want to stay on, we can make adjustments. No field work, maybe logistics or planning." Logan smiled faintly, shaking his head. "You don't need to do that, Keanu. I'm done. Guys like me, we don't shift gears well. My body knew one language, and I can't speak it anymore." Keanu looked at him, trying to find the right words. "You gave me a second chance that day. You deserve one too." Logan's expression softened but remained distant. "You're kind, but I've been behind people my whole life, keeping them safe, unseen. Maybe it's time I learn what it feels like to stand in the open. Or maybe I just disappear. Either way, I'll figure it out." They stood at the doorway for a long moment before Keanu left. Neither man said goodbye, The sound of the door closing felt final, like a curtain dropping. Months later, Keanu sent one last message. "Thank you, brother. You saved more than my life that day." It was never answered. From that point on, Logan Pierce became a ghost. His name unlisted. His number changed. He walked out of Hollywood and into quiet obscurity, leaving behind only the memory of a man who had once been a shield between chaos and the world. The air behind the stage of Beat Rebirth smelled of sweat, dust, and nervous anticipation. Music thundered from the main floor as dancers cheered each other on, their sneakers squeaking on the polished concrete. Backstage, the lighting was dimmer, a small maze of folding chairs, power cords, and bottled water. Logan Pierce sat near the corner, head down, tying the frayed laces on his old sneakers. His hands were steady, but his breathing was measured, controlled. It was the kind of focus that came not from confidence, but from years of hiding unease behind discipline. A small group of young dancers leaned against a speaker nearby, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. "Man, who let this guy in? Looks like he walked in from a construction site." Another laughed. "Old man's gonna pop a hip before he pops a move." They laughed harder, elbowing each other, unaware that the man they mocked had once stood inches away from explosions, fights, and chaos to protect others. Logan heard every word. He didn't flinch. He simply smiled faintly, the kind of half-smile that came from knowing which opinions mattered and which didn't. He looked down at his entry form sitting on the metal chair beside him. The paper was smudged from sweat and dust, the ink slightly faded. Under the stage name line, he had written, "Low Pierce." A mix of old identity and new. The host's voice echoed through the speakers from the main floor. "Up next, we've got a newcomer to Beat Rebirth. Says he's been out of the game for a while, but he's ready to bring it back. Give it up for Low Pierce." The laughter outside swelled again. Logan took one slow breath, stood, and rolled his shoulders. The motion made his old injury ache, but he ignored it. That pain was part of him now. A reminder that he had once mattered to someone, once been part of something bigger. He moved toward the stage entrance. His sneakers made soft, deliberate steps, echoing off the metal ramp. For a brief second, he stopped at the curtain. Behind him, the backstage lights hummed. In front of him, beyond the black fabric, was noise, movement, and the unknown. He muttered to himself, just loud enough for the sound engineer nearby to catch. "Let's see if I still remember how to move." His voice carried no arrogance, only quiet defiance. The kind that comes from a man who had nothing left to prove, but everything left to feel. At that moment, somewhere in the crowd, a familiar figure slipped through the entrance doors. A man in a dark jacket and cap, keeping his head low. Keanu Reeves walked along the edge of the auditorium, unnoticed, his eyes scanning the stage lights as he heard the MC announce the next performer. Keanu stopped just short of the security barrier, slipping into the shadows beside a row of folding chairs near the back. His hood was up, the cap brim pulled low, but even under the dim lighting, the calm intensity in his eyes never wavered. He wasn't here as a celebrity tonight. He was here as a man searching for a piece of his past. The host's voice boomed again through the mic. "All right, folks, let's give some energy to our next competitor, Low Pierce." The crowd responded with half-hearted cheers and a few sarcastic whistles. "Don't hurt yourself, Grandpa," someone yelled from the back row. The laughter rippled like a wave. Keanu's jaw tightened. He had spent enough time in Hollywood to recognize cruelty disguised as humor. It was always the same, a crowd that measured worth by appearance, blind to the stories buried beneath the surface. He leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on the stage curtain, waiting for Logan to emerge. Behind the curtain, Logan took one final deep breath. The vibrations of the music reached him through the floor, steady and powerful. His pulse matched the rhythm. He wasn't sure if this was courage or foolishness, but he'd made peace with that long ago. He adjusted his cap, cracked his neck, and whispered something that only he could hear. No turning back now. When the curtain parted, light poured over him. The crowd saw a man in plain clothes, thick shoulders, and weathered arms, walking onto a stage that glittered with youth and swagger. He paused at center, eyes down, hands at his sides. The audience expected hesitation. Instead, he stood tall, grounding himself like an anchor amid the noise. The host smiled thinly and raised the mic again. "Logan Pierce, right? You said in your entry you're, what was it, getting back into movement? Mind telling the crowd what that means?" Logan looked at him, his expression unreadable. "It means I'm not done yet." A few snickers echoed. Someone muttered, "We'll see about that." Keanu's lips twitched upward. He knew that tone. He'd heard it before on sets, in interviews, in moments when people underestimated someone who carried quiet strength. The DJ gave a thumbs up, signaling the start of the 4-track. Logan took a single step back, his shadow stretching across the polished floor. He bent slightly at the knees, like an athlete preparing for impact. The beat dropped hard, sharp, relentless. The sound filled the room, pulsing through every ribcage. Logan's head lifted. The faint flicker in his eyes shifted into something fierce and alive. From the back, Keanu leaned forward just enough to whisper to himself, "There he is." The crowd erupted as the bass deepened, sending tremors through the floor. Logan stood at the center of the stage, motionless for a breath, his chest rising and falling with slow control. For a brief second, everything else faded: the laughter, the lights, the stares. There was only sound and memory. He closed his eyes, and his body began to move. Not fast, not flashy, but precise. Each step landed like punctuation to a story he had never told. His hands cut through the air in wide arcs, tracing shapes that seemed choreographed by instinct rather than routine. The audience, expecting stiffness, fell silent. Keanu watched from the back, remembering. He saw the old precision in those movements, the same awareness that had once made Logan unshakable in chaos. Every shift of weight carried rhythm and purpose. The years of silence had not erased his timing, they had simply deepened it. As Logan turned with a grounded pivot, a small crack of emotion crossed his face. His jaw tightened, but his eyes glowed with something raw, like a wound that had finally started to heal. For a man who had lived unseen for so long, this was resurrection. From the side of the stage, one of the young dancers whispered, "He's good." Another nodded quietly, "Really good." The jokes stopped, the smirks faded, the energy shifted. Halfway through the routine, the music dropped to a slow rhythm, a soft pulse of drums and strings. Logan adjusted without hesitation. He used the pause to breathe, then struck the floor with deliberate power. Movements no longer about winning, but reclaiming. The tattoos on his arms caught the light, forming the shapes of scars that told their own story. The audience leaned forward. The MC, once smirking, lowered the microphone completely. A strange respect filled the air, something neither planned nor scripted. Then, as the beat climbed again, Logan's pace quickened. He spun once, twice, landing in perfect sync with the music's final rise. The motion wasn't graceful, it was honest. It carried years of loss, pain, and the stubborn refusal to vanish quietly. When the final note hit, he froze mid-turn, eyes open, chest heaving, silence stretched for several seconds. Then applause broke out, small at first, then louder, building like a storm. Keanu stood slowly, clapping with quiet rhythm. Around him, others followed. What began as mockery had turned into reverence. Logan lifted his head toward the crowd, scanning the sea of faces until his gaze met Keanu's in the back. Recognition flickered. The past and present collided in that single glance. And for the first time in 15 years, Logan Pierce smiled. Not out of pride, but out of peace. The music thundered through the hall, pulsing with energy that vibrated against the walls. Logan stood center stage, under a ring of harsh white lights. For the first few beats, he didn't move. He stood still, shoulders tight, every muscle coiled like a spring, refusing to release. The crowd waited, murmuring, confused by his stillness. Then, with a small shift of weight, he began to move. At first, it was awkward. His timing missed by half a beat, his steps heavy, his coordination off. His body seemed to fight against him, as if years of inactivity were locking his limbs in protest. Someone in the audience laughed. Another voice called out, "Guess he forgot the choreography." The laughter spread like static, loud and merciless. Logan felt it. Every chuckle cut through him like the echo of failure. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to regain the rhythm, but deep inside, there was something else, a flicker of memory, a fragment of the drills he once practiced in endless repetition while guarding film sets, training in reaction and rhythm. Movement had once been his language, his form of control. That memory stirred now, buried beneath layers of time and doubt. He inhaled deeply through his nose, blocking out the sound of ridicule. He let the bass beat flow through him, feeling each vibration sink into his bones. Then, he changed. His posture straightened, his breathing aligned with the rhythm, and when the next beat dropped, he struck the floor with precision. The motion was subtle, but sharp. One step, then a turn, a roll of his shoulder that matched the tempo perfectly. His body began to follow his instincts rather than the noise around him. Every step carried the echoes of old drills, the rhythm of defense training that had once made him unshakable under pressure. But now, those same patterns looked like choreography. The crowd noticed. The laughter began to fade. One by one, heads tilted. Phones were lifted. The man they had mocked just moments ago was no longer fumbling. He was transforming. The strength in his movements wasn't youthful showmanship. It was controlled power, precise and raw. Logan stepped into a side spin, planting his heel hard enough to echo through the speakers. The motion flowed into a sweep, then a drop to one knee that made the light catch the tattoos on his arms. Each mark told a story, a scar, a memory, a piece of history he carried openly now. Keanu watched from the shadows near the exit door. He didn't move, didn't speak, but a faint smile crossed his face. He could see what the crowd could not, that Logan wasn't just dancing. He was fighting something invisible, and for the first time in years, he was winning. The rhythm quickened, and Logan adjusted instinctively. His body, once hesitant, began to trust itself again. He didn't look at the crowd, not even once. His gaze stayed low, locked on the reflection of his movements on the polished floor. Each motion built upon the last, blending the calculated control of a guard with the fluid grace of a dancer. His feet tapped in patterns that mirrored combat drills, pivots shifting like evasive maneuvers. He wasn't just moving to the music. He was retracing the muscle memory of his past. Every beat pulled him closer to a version of himself he had buried long ago. The man who could act without fear, whose instincts had once saved lives. The audience began to lean forward. Conversations faded. Laughter stopped entirely. Something about the man's movement demanded silence. It wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. He wasn't dancing for applause. He was dancing like someone clawing his way out of a locked room. A young dancer near the stage whispered to her friend, "He's not performing. He's remembering." Logan could feel it too. Each motion was a confession, a release. When he spun, he remembered the day the car came at him. When he dropped low, he remembered the cold of the hospital bed. When he rose again, he remembered how it felt to be forgotten. Every second was another piece of his life taking shape in rhythm. The DJ caught the shift and, Sensing the energy, layered in a heavier bass line, the lights began to strobe, flashing over Logan's face. He didn't break concentration. His shoulders rolled through the beat like water, each transition smoother than the last. Sweat streamed down his temples, but the fatigue didn't matter. He wasn't competing with anyone else on that stage, only with the silence that had followed him for 15 years. From the back, Keanu watched every movement, as though he were witnessing a man come back from the dead. His heart pounded, not from excitement, but from recognition. The rhythm, the focus, the precision, these were the same qualities that had once saved his life. But now, they were saving Logan's. Then, in one seamless motion, Logan stepped into a controlled spin that drew the crowd's full attention. The move ended with him slamming one foot into the ground and raising his arms in time with the music's break. The audience gasped at the power behind it. For a heartbeat, the entire venue stood still. And then the murmuring began again, different this time. Admiration replaced mockery. People began cheering, clapping along to the rhythm. The change was electric. Logan didn't smile. Not yet. But there was a spark in his eyes, a recognition that maybe, just maybe, he had found his footing again. The crowd's energy built with every beat. What had begun as laughter was now awe. Logan's movements told a story none of them expected. A story of struggle, endurance, and rebirth. He spun sharply, landing on his heel, then slid forward in one fluid sweep. The stage lights reflected off the sweat on his skin, making him look like a man forged from motion itself. Every part of his body moved with purpose. His fists opened, his chest lifted, his shoulders rolled back as if releasing years of pain. When the bass hit again, he dropped into a grounded stance, one knee bent, his hand brushing the floor, before rising into a full extension. It looked almost ceremonial, like he was reclaiming something he'd lost the right to touch. In the corner, Keanu's soft smile grew. He could see exactly what the others couldn't. The rhythm wasn't just music, it was memory. The same drills that had once trained Logan to protect had now become an expression of freedom. This was no longer about the competition. It was about redemption. The DJ caught on and shifted the beat again, lowering the volume so the rhythm pulsed like a heartbeat. The sound echoed through the audience, syncing with every breath in the room. The crowd clapped slowly, then faster, following the rhythm. It wasn't polished or professional. It was human, collective, alive. Logan's movements changed again. His tempo softened. He began weaving between strength and stillness, between control and release. Every pause felt like a confession, every rise, a quiet victory. The tattoos on his arms, emblems of a younger man's defiance, now seemed like symbols of resilience. A hush fell as he froze mid-spin, head bowed, chest heaving. The lights flickered across his face. Time stretched thin. Then he straightened, turning toward the back of the hall, where Keanu stood watching. Their eyes met across the distance. No words were needed. In that silent exchange, everything from the past came rushing back. The accident, the hospital, the years of silence, and with it, something new. Understanding. Keanu nodded once, slow and proud. It wasn't an order or encouragement. It was acknowledgement. The man who had once been his protector was now protecting himself from regret, from fear, from invisibility. The music reached its final beat, deep and resonant. Logan hit the last move perfectly, a simple bow, nothing dramatic. He stood upright, breathing heavily, the weight of 15 years lifting off his shoulders. No one clapped yet. For a few seconds, the silence held. Then applause erupted, shaking the floor. Logan closed his eyes. Tears barely held back. He had stepped onto that stage, uncertain if he still belonged. Now, he knew he never truly left. When the last note faded, the crowd stayed frozen for a heartbeat. Logan stood in the center of the stage, chest rising and falling, sweat glistening down his arms. His heart hammered, not from exhaustion but disbelief. He'd finished. He'd actually made it through. For a moment, the silence was unbearable. Then, soft murmurs spread through the audience. "Who is that guy?" someone whispered. "Where'd he learn to move like that?" Another voice added, "He's too good to be new." The lights shifted, bathing the stage in warm gold. Logan blinked, squinting against the brightness. He could see faces, now hundreds of them, leaning forward, curious, no longer mocking. The MC hesitated, microphone in hand, unsure what to say. He had expected another novelty act, not something that left the audience quiet. Logan bent slightly, hands on his knees, catching his breath. Cameras from the front row zoomed in, capturing the beads of sweat running down his temples, the tremble in his hands, the steady rise of his chest. Someone near the stage shouted, "Do that again," and laughter followed. Not cruel this time, but excited, amazed. Logan smiled faintly and gave a small bow. The gesture was humble, almost apologetic. But before he could step back, the sound of slow, deliberate clapping echoed from the far end of the hall. It was steady, measured, rhythmic. The sound cut through the chatter. Heads turned. People craned their necks toward the source of the sound. At the back of the auditorium, under the dim balcony lights, a man stood clapping alone. The camera flashes caught him mid-motion, and gasps swept the room. "Wait, that's..." someone said. "Is that Keanu Reeves?" another voice shouted. The MC froze, eyes wide, microphone dropping slightly. Keanu continued to clap, each beat carrying weight, each motion deliberate. The sound grew louder as others began joining in, though many hesitated, watching him in awe. He wasn't clapping for attention, he was honoring someone who had just taken back his life. Logan's eyes followed the sound until they met Keanu's. His body went still. The stage lights, the noise, the people, it all blurred. For one suspended moment, the years vanished. He wasn't a washed-up guard on a stage. He was back on that film set, back in the moment before the crash, back in the world where their paths first crossed. Keanu smiled and lifted a hand, signaling for silence. The crowd obeyed instantly. Then his voice carried through the quiet, warm and steady. "Show them what you taught me, brother. Courage is stepping out of the past." The room fell utterly silent. Then, all at once, applause erupted, roaring, thunderous, alive. The sound of applause filled the air like a storm breaking over still water. People rose to their feet, clapping, shouting, whistling. The cameras swung from Logan to Keanu, capturing every angle, the crowd's disbelief turning into wild excitement. A moment ago, Logan had been a forgotten face in a crowd of hopefuls. Now he was standing in a blaze of recognition that neither of them had planned. Logan blinked against the lights, trying to process what he was seeing. Keanu Reeves, his old boss, the man he once protected, the man he hadn't spoken to in over a decade, was standing there, clapping for him. It felt surreal, impossible, almost like a dream pulled from the depths of regret. The MC scrambled to regain control of the moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," he stammered into the microphone, I don't think we need to introduce who that is." The crowd cheered even louder. Phones flashed like lightning, recording every second. Keanu stayed calm in the chaos, his presence somehow grounding the energy rather than adding to it. He stepped forward slowly, weaving between rows of spectators. The applause softened as he approached the stage, replaced by murmurs of awe. Some people reached out to shake his hand. Others simply stepped aside. His focus never wavered from Logan. On stage, Logan's breathing grew shallow. He didn't know whether to smile or step back, The years of distance between them suddenly collapsed, replaced by raw emotion. He wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Keanu stopped at the base of the stage, looking up. "You still move like you mean it," he said, voice low enough that only the closest cameras caught it. Logan swallowed hard, his throat tightening. "You shouldn't be here," he managed. Keanu smiled softly. "Neither should you, but here we are." That line sent a quiet ripple through the room. People exchanged glances, unsure what to feel. This wasn't celebrity theatrics. It was something deeply human, something few had ever seen in real time. The MC finally spoke again, voice shaking slightly. "So, are you telling us you two know each other?" Keanu looked at Logan, then back to the host. "He's not just a performer," said. "He's a man who once put his life on the line to save mine." A gasp spread through the hall. Logan's eyes widened, caught off guard by Keanu's openness. "He taught me something that day," Keanu continued. "That courage isn't about standing in front of danger, it's about standing up again when the world's already moved on." The crowd went silent, every word sinking in. Then, as if on cue, they rose again, clapping louder than before. Cameras zoomed in on Logan's face as tears mixed with sweat. In that moment, he wasn't a forgotten guard. He was someone who mattered again. The applause thundered on, echoing off the walls, shaking the very floor beneath them. Logan stood frozen in place, overwhelmed. He hadn't expected any of this, not the applause, not the recognition, and certainly not Keanu. For 15 years, he'd lived in silence, believing that moment on the set had been the end of his story. But now, under the hot lights of the stage, it felt like a new chapter had begun. Keanu motioned to the MC, who stepped aside, giving him the microphone. The crowd hushed, phones raised, every lens focused on him. Keanu looked out over the audience, then back up at Logan, his tone warm but steady. "You see that man?" he said, pointing to the stage. "He's not an actor, not a celebrity, not someone chasing fame. He's a protector. And tonight, he reminded all of us what courage looks like." The words hit the crowd like a wave. The people who had laughed earlier now looked down, guilty, ashamed. Those who had mocked his age were now cheering his strength. The energy shifted completely, respect replacing ridicule. Keanu continued, voice calm but commanding. "Years ago, he saved my life. I've never forgotten it. But life has a way of moving on. Tonight, I saw him take back something he lost a long time ago, and that's more powerful than any movie I've ever made." The hall erupted again, this time with genuine emotion. Logan's knees nearly gave way, but he caught himself. The sound was overwhelming, but what moved him most wasn't the applause. It was the sincerity in Keanu's voice. Keanu smiled up at him, then called out one final time, his words ringing through the noise. "Show them what you taught me, brother. Courage is stepping out of the past." The entire venue went silent for a single, suspended second. Every camera froze on that image, the humbled guard and the global star locked in mutual recognition. Then, as if the air itself couldn't hold the tension any longer, the cheers exploded once more. He felt something inside him unlock a weight that had sat on his chest for years, finally lifting. He raised his right arm high, not in triumph but in gratitude, and nodded toward Keanu. Keanu nodded back, smiling that quiet, knowing smile that had no trace of fame, only friendship. In that moment, under flashing lights and roaring applause, Logan Pierce stopped being a ghost from the past. He became a man reborn in front of thousands by the simple grace of being seen again. The atmosphere inside the hall changed completely. What began as a typical competition now felt like something sacred. Keanu's presence had shifted the room's heartbeat. The crowd, moments ago loud and chaotic, now seemed to move in rhythm with something larger than themselves. The air was thick with awe, disbelief, and raw emotion. Logan stood on the stage, still dazed. His mind struggled to catch up with what was happening. The crowd's reaction, the thunder of applause, and the sight of Keanu Reeves standing there, it all blurred together in a single overwhelming wave. For a second, he thought he might fall, not from exhaustion, but from sheer disbelief that this was real. Phones lifted like a field of stars. Hundreds of tiny screens framed him, not in mockery this time, but reverence. People shouted his name. "Logan! Logan! Logan!" The sound echoed through the hall, carrying the rhythm of unity. The same crowd that had laughed at him minutes ago now stood on their feet, chanting for him like he was the headliner. The MC, caught between professionalism and wonder, tried to regain control. "All right, everyone, let's hear it for Logan Pierce." But his words were drowned out by the cheers. Even he couldn't resist clapping, caught up in the emotion. Keanu stayed where he was, his calm presence anchoring the chaos. Every camera pointed toward him, but he didn't shift the spotlight. Instead, he raised his arm and gestured toward the stage. "This is his moment," he said softly to no one in particular. But his words carried enough weight that a few nearby fans repeated them aloud. Logan wiped his face with the back of his hand, his vision blurring with tears he hadn't expected. His heart raced, his breathing uneven. He looked out at the sea of faces, young dancers, families, strangers, and realized none of them saw him as the broken man he'd believed himself to be. They saw him as proof that it was never too late to begin again. The DJ caught the energy and dropped a new track slower, more soulful. The crowd immediately clapped in time, a wall of sound rising to meet him. Logan hesitated, caught between gratitude and disbelief. Then, almost shyly, he began to move again. His shoulders swayed, his feet followed the rhythm, and the room erupted with cheers. He laughed mid-move, the sound raw and pure. It was the first real laugh he'd let out in years. And it spread. People clapped louder, stomping, matching his rhythm. For the first time, Logan wasn't performing for anyone. He was just living in the moment. In the corner, Keanu smiled a quiet, knowing smile that said everything. This wasn't a performance anymore. It was a revival. The rhythm spread like wildfire. The crowd was no longer an audience. They were part of something alive. People clapped in unison, their voices echoing through the walls of the old auditorium. Even the dancers who had mocked Logan earlier joined in, their eyes wide with emotion. The beat wasn't just coming from the speakers now. It came from every hand, every heart, every foot tapping the floor. Logan spun once, not to show off, but to release the last of his fear. The movement was imperfect, but it carried meaning. His arms opened wide, his chest lifted, and his laughter broke through the noise again. That laugh, rough, unguarded, and full of life, ignited the crowd. People began shouting his name louder, waving phones, some even wiping their eyes without understanding why. From his corner near the wall, Keanu watched with quiet satisfaction. He didn't move closer. He didn't want to steal the moment. The spotlight belonged to Logan now. What mattered wasn't the fame, the lights, or the applause. It was the truth behind it. This was redemption happening in real time. The MC stood, motionless, microphone hanging uselessly at his side. There was no point trying to control it anymore. Whatever this was, it had gone far beyond any script or schedule. The event had transformed into something else, something no one there would ever forget. Logan turned toward the audience, his face streaked with sweat and tears. He lifted his arms high, and the music swelled. The DJ, caught in the emotion, shifted the tempo once more, layering a triumphant rhythm over the steady beat. The crowd erupted again, their cheers synchronizing with the music's rise. Young dancers at the front, the same ones who had laughed before, stepped forward, forming a circle at the edge of the stage. One of them shouted, "Show us more, man!" Logan smiled through tears, motioned them closer, and beckoned them to join. A teenage girl hesitated, then climbed onto the stage. The crowd cheered louder as Logan nodded for her to take the first move. She spun, kicked, and froze. In a classic pose, her face lit up with awe. Logan responded with a simple, grounded step, a slow, steady groove that made the crowd roar. It was a bridge between generations, between old rhythm and new energy. Keanu's eyes softened. He could see what Logan was doing. He wasn't just dancing anymore, he was teaching again, passing on the courage he'd reclaimed. The girl stepped back, overwhelmed, and the crowd applauded wildly. Logan gave her a small bow, then turned back toward the lights. The moment was no longer about him winning back his past. It was about everyone realizing that comebacks aren't about fame, they're about heart. The crowd's rhythm grew stronger, shaking the floor. The hall had turned into something more than a dance venue. It felt like a heartbeat shared among hundreds of people. Logan looked around, breathless, overwhelmed by the wave of sound and light surrounding him. Every face in the audience reflected something different. Respect, gratitude, inspiration. He could barely take it in. The young dancers on stage began chanting his name again, this time with pride. "Logan Pierce, Logan Pierce." The chant caught on until it filled every corner of the hall. The MC stood near the edge, shaking his head in disbelief, eyes shining. He knew he was witnessing a story that would be talked about long after the lights went out. Keanu watched from his quiet spot, hands in his pockets. He could see the transformation unfolding not just in Logan, but in the people watching him. Something had shifted. Those who had judged by appearances now saw the truth. Strength doesn't fade with age, and courage doesn't retire. The world rarely gives people second chances, but tonight, everyone in that room was watching one being earned. Logan lifted both arms slowly, palms open. The crowd answered with cheers so loud they drowned out the speakers. He took one last deep breath and let the music guide him again. This time, his movements were lighter, freer, like a man, finally letting go of every invisible weight he'd carried. He moved in circles, his shoes sliding across the stage in rhythm with the clapping. Halfway through, he laughed again, louder, freer, unstoppable. It wasn't a laugh of pride or surprise. It was release. It was joy. He clapped his hands to the rhythm, urging the audience to join him. Hundreds of palms struck in perfect time, filling the space with thunder. The beat was no longer coming from the speakers. It was coming from them all. When the song ended, Logan froze mid-motion, chest heaving. He looked down for a second, overwhelmed, then slowly raised his head to the audience. His eyes glistened. The applause that followed didn't sound like celebration. It sounded like gratitude. Keanu began to clap again, his expression calm, proud, and peaceful. He didn't shout or wave. He just nodded once, the same way he had years ago after a long day on set when words weren't needed. Logan saw it, and something inside him clicked. He wasn't the forgotten guard anymore. He wasn't the man who disappeared from the world. He was someone alive again, someone seen. And in that moment, under the glow of hundreds of lights and voices, the competition didn't matter anymore. It wasn't about winning. It was about coming back. The lights dimmed as the crowd's cheers echoed into the corridors behind the stage. The music faded into silence, replaced by the low hum of after-show chaos crew members packing up cables, dancers laughing, and camera crews rushing to capture reactions. Backstage smelled of sweat, metal, and faint cologne. That unmistakable scent of adrenaline and relief after a performance. In the corner of the narrow hallway, Logan sat on a folding chair, his hands trembling slightly as he held an ice pack to his shoulder. The heat of the lights had given way to the cool shock of reality. He was exhausted, every muscle burning. But inside, he felt something he hadn't known in years. Peace. He leaned back, letting out a long, uneven breath. The voices outside still echoed faintly. "Low Pierce. Low Pierce." The chant brought a smile to his lips. It wasn't pride he felt. It was gratitude. For the first time in a long time, he'd stopped running from who he was. The curtain to the hallway shifted. A quiet murmur passed through the crew members nearby. Heads turned. Someone whispered, "He's coming." Keanu stepped through the curtain. The energy changed instantly. He wasn't smiling for cameras, and there was no press entourage. He walked slowly, hands in his pockets. The kind of entrance that carried respect instead of spotlight. The soft sound of his boots echoed on the concrete floor. When he reached the end of the hallway, he stopped. Logan looked up. Their eyes met, and for a few seconds, neither spoke. The weight of 15 silent years filled the air between them. Logan tried to rise, but Keanu lifted a hand gently. "Don't," he said. "You've done enough standing for one night." Logan chuckled, his voice rough from fatigue. "Guess I still know how to make an entrance." Keanu smiled faintly. "You never forgot how to hold a room." For a moment, silence returned. Then Keanu stepped closer, his expression softening. "You saved my life. Once," he said quietly. "Tonight, you just saved your own." Logan's throat tightened. He looked down, blinking back tears. "I didn't know if I could still move like that," he admitted. "Didn't think anyone would care." "They cared," Keanu said. "They just didn't know who you were until tonight." Logan exhaled, the words landing deep. He nodded slowly. "Maybe I didn't either." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. Not the one that had once been broken, but the other, firm and steady. "You never stopped being that man, Logan. You just needed the world to see him again." Logan laughed through his tears, shaking his head. "You always had a way with words." Keanu grinned. "Only when they're true." For a long moment they stood there without speaking, the silence heavy but warm. Years of distance and guilt seemed to fade in the shared stillness. Keanu's eyes softened as he looked at the man who had once thrown himself into danger without hesitation. Logan looked older now, slower, but there was still the same steadiness in him, the same quiet dignity that had always defined him. Keanu pulled up a chair and sat across from him. "How long has it been?" he asked softly. Logan smiled faintly. "Long enough for my hair to turn gray and my knees to start complaining." Keanu laughed under his breath. "You used to tell me getting old was for quitters." "Yeah," Logan said, chuckling. "Turns out, I quit a few times along the way." They both laughed quietly, the sound gentle and unforced. For a moment, it felt like the years between them had never happened. But beneath the laughter was something heavier, everything left unsaid. Keanu's voice lowered. "I tried to find you after the accident. You just disappeared." Logan stared at the ice pack in his hands. "Didn't want to be found. I couldn't protect anyone anymore. And without that, I didn't know what else I was good for." Keanu leaned forward. "You were never just a bodyguard. You were my friend. You stood next to me when the cameras turned away. That doesn't disappear because of an injury." Logan's lips trembled as he tried to hold back emotion. "That day took more out of me than my shoulder. I felt like I'd failed at the only thing I was built for. I didn't know how to live in silence." Keanu nodded slowly, his voice quiet but firm. "We all break somewhere, Logan. But sometimes the break lets the light in. Tonight, I saw that light come back." Those words hit hard. Logan swallowed, his throat tight, and looked away before whispering, "I wasn't supposed to be here. I signed up just to feel alive for 5 minutes." Keanu smiled gently. "You gave them more than that. You gave them proof that it's never too late to come back." Logan finally met his gaze again. "You always did see things I couldn't." Keanu shook his head. "No, you showed them to me first." For a moment, the Two men just sat in silence, the only sound the muffled roar of the crowd still buzzing outside. It was a rare kind of quiet, the kind that only comes when two people finally lay down the weight they've been carrying for too long. Then, from the corner of the room, a soft click echoed. A young dancer stood near the door, holding her phone, her eyes wide. She'd captured the moment without meaning to. Keanu turned and smiled at her. "Don't delete it," he said. "Let them see what real strength looks like." The young dancer lowered her phone, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Logan chuckled softly, wiping at his face. "You didn't interrupt. You just caught an old man looking like a mess." Keanu smiled at her, reassuringly. "You caught something real," he said. "Don't hide it. The world needs more of that." She nodded quickly, her eyes shimmering, and slipped away. The photo was posted within minutes. Two men sitting across from each other, under dim backstage lights. One in a simple t-shirt, the other in his signature black jacket. No captions, no filters, just truth. By the time the night was over, it would circle the globe. Back in the hallway, the two men remained seated, the noise of the event slowly fading. Crew members passed by, whispering in disbelief, giving them respectful distance. Logan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You know," he said quietly, "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Keanu nodded. "I wasn't sure if you wanted to." Logan gave a tired smile. "Maybe I didn't back then. I was ashamed. I thought disappearing would make it easier for both of us." "It didn't," Keanu replied. "You left a hole in my story that never closed." Logan stared at the floor, his breath catching. "You really mean that?" Keanu's eyes softened. "You don't forget the person who saved your life. You just wait for the provide day you can thank him the right way." For the first time in years, Logan had no reply. His vision blurred, and he blinked rapidly to hide the tears welling up. Keanu stood and extended a hand. Logan hesitated, then reached up. Their hands met not as actor and guard, but as brothers in spirit, both marked by time and forgiveness. When they finally hugged, it wasn't brief or staged. It was long and trembling, full of everything they hadn't said in 15 years. Keanu's voice was quiet against his shoulder. "You came back," he said. Logan nodded, his voice breaking. "Guess I finally listened to that voice in my head, the one that sounded a lot like you." Keanu laughed softly. "Then I'm glad you did." They pulled apart, both smiling, both wiping at their eyes. The distant echo of the crowd, still chanting outside, filled the space around them. Logan glanced toward the curtain and said, almost to himself, "Maybe life doesn't forget us, after all." Keanu looked at him and nodded. "No, it just waits for us to show up again." The memory of that night lingered with Logan long after the crowd had gone home. But for him, the story hadn't started there. It had started in the quiet years, in the slow unraveling that followed the accident. After his injury, he tried to rebuild a normal life. A friend from his security days found him a position at a private firm, mostly desk work, managing schedules and access logs. It paid the bills, but it wasn't the same. The hum of danger, the adrenaline of responsibility, all gone. He'd sit in a cubicle, staring at monitors, pretending to care about grainy footage of empty hallways. His body healed, but his spirit stayed fractured. 3 months in, the company downsized. His boss, a polite man in a crisp suit, thanked him for his service and handed him a severance check. Logan nodded, shook the man's hand, and walked out without a word. That night, he sat in his car for hours outside the office building, watching the lights go out one by one. Work became harder to find after that. Security firms didn't want someone with limited motion in one arm. He took what he could get: warehouse shifts, delivery routes, anything that kept him moving. But the pay was small, and the loneliness larger. His marriage began to crack under the strain. His wife, Emily, tried to stay supportive at first, reminding him that healing takes time. But the months turned to years, and the distance grew. He stopped talking about his past. She stopped asking. Their daughter, Anna, was still in high school then. She adored him once, used to run into his arms when he came home from work. But now, she avoided him too. "Dad, you're always tired," she'd say. He'd smile and pretend it didn't sting. The day Emily packed her things, he didn't argue. He just watched her load the last box into her car and said quietly, "Take care of her." She didn't look back. After that, life blurred into routine. Days at the warehouse, nights in silence, meals alone, TV for company. His body moved, but his mind was somewhere else, stuck in that moment when the car spun toward Keanu, when everything he'd built ended in one flash of pain. Years passed. His phone stopped ringing. Friends drifted away. His world became smaller. A one-bedroom apartment, a dusty photo of his daughter, and an old jacket with his security badge still pinned inside. Then one night, walking home after a late shift, he heard music coming from a small dance studio tucked between a laundromat and a cafe. The sound stopped him in his tracks. The beat was fast, the rhythm clean, the kind that made your heartbeat match its pace. He stood outside the glass door, watching through the fogged window as a group of teenagers practiced routines. They laughed, stumbled, corrected each other, and laughed again. Something about the sound, the unity, the pulse, made his chest ache in a way he couldn't explain. Logan stood outside that window for nearly half an hour, watching the group move to the rhythm of the music. He didn't know why he couldn't walk away. Maybe it was the precision of their steps, maybe the sense of belonging in their laughter, or maybe it was because the beat reminded him of the rhythm he once knew, the timing of his movements when everything still made sense. When the class ended, the instructor, a woman in her 30s with a bright smile and messy bun, noticed him through the glass. She stepped outside, holding a towel around her neck. "You okay out here?" she asked kindly. Logan startled slightly. "Yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to stare." She smiled. "You like the music?" He nodded. "It's different. Feels alive. You should come inside next time," she said. "We can always use an audience. Or a broom." He chuckled, unsure if she was joking. But the next night, after work, he returned. And that's exactly what he did. He swept floors. He told her he wasn't looking to dance, just needed to be around something that sounded like life again. She didn't ask questions, just handed him a broom and a bottle of water. Weeks passed. He came every night. The dancers got used to him, the quiet man in the back, who tidied up after practice, occasionally tapping his foot when the music hit a good beat. Sometimes he gave them small pointers about focus, posture, balance. His observations were sharp, precise, like someone who understood movement on a deeper level. One evening, the instructor noticed him watching a freestyle session. "You used to move, didn't you?" she asked, walking over. Logan smiled faintly. "A long time ago. Different kind of movement." She tilted her head. "Maybe it's time you remembered." He hesitated, but she handed him a towel and said, "Floor's open." The room went quiet as he stepped forward. At first, his body resisted stiff, unsure, rusty. But as the beat grew, something inside him loosened. The movements came back. Not perfect, not fast, but controlled and meaningful. The teens clapped and cheered him on. When he stopped, they surrounded him with high fives and laughter. For the first time in years, he smiled without forcing it. From that night on, he wasn't just the janitor who cleaned up. He was part of the studio. He helped coach balance and rhythm, taught the kids how to ground their movements. They called him Coach Low. He laughed every time, pretending to brush it off. But the name meant more to him than they knew. As months turned to years, he found purpose again. The dance floor became his refuge. The rhythm, his therapy. The pain never fully left, but it softened with every beat. And when a flyer for the Beat Rebirth street dance competition appeared on the bulletin board, one of the teens tore it down and handed it to him. "You should go," she said. "You've got stories in your feet, coach." He almost said no. But that night, as he locked up the studio, the music still echoing in his ears, he whispered to himself, "Maybe it's time." That decision led him to the stage, where fate and an old friend was waiting. The city outside his window glowed with late-night stillness. The roar of the crowd at Beat Rebirth had faded hours ago, but the echo of that moment still pulsed quietly in Keanu's mind. He sat at the small desk in his hotel room, a single lamp casting a soft circle of light over an open notebook. His jacket hung on the back of the chair, his sleeves rolled to his elbows, his pen poised but unmoving. For a long time, he just sat there, listening to the hum of traffic below. When he finally began to write, the words came slow, deliberate. "People think courage is loud," he wrote, his handwriting steady and neat. "They imagine it as shouting into the wind or standing before a crowd, but real courage is quieter. It's the decision to stand up again after years of sitting out." He paused, letting the words sink in. The image of Logan on that stage replayed in his mind the awkward first steps, the laughter, the transformation. Keanu could still see the sweat glistening under, the stage lights, the trembling hands, the quiet fire behind every move. That was what courage looked like, not performance, but rebirth. He flipped to the next page and kept writing. "Fame blinds us to the people who keep us standing. Every success we celebrate sits on the shoulders of those who never ask for credit. Logan was one of them. He stood behind me, unseen, until life pushed him out of sight. Tonight, he stepped back into the light not for applause, but for himself." Keanu leaned back in his chair, tapping the pen against the edge of the notebook. The hotel room was simple, unadorned, yet it carried a kind of quiet peace that matched his thoughts. He'd been to countless shows, award ceremonies, interviews, and stages, but few moments had moved him the way this one had. He looked at his reflection in the dark window, a man older now, slower maybe, but still learning. "The world remembers actors," he whispered, "but forgets the guards, the drivers, the teachers, the ones who make everything possible." The memory of the accident flickered again. He saw the car spinning, the blur of metal, the weight of Logan's body slamming into him, the pain that followed, and the silence afterward. For years, he had carried guilt that Logan's injury had ended a career built on protecting others. But tonight, watching Logan dance, he realized something had come full circle. He picked up his pen again. "He didn't just protect me once. He reminded me tonight that no one's purpose truly ends. It just changes shape." He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling that truth settle deep. The soft glow of the city lights seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, and he knew what he had to do next. Keanu turned to a new page in his notebook and sat quietly for a moment, staring at the blank space. The thought of how many people had stood beside him over the years filled his mind. Faces he remembered, others he'd lost touch with. Stunt doubles who risked injury to make his films believable. Assistants who worked long nights to keep schedules on track. Drivers who waited in the cold after every shoot. Most of them would never be recognized, but they were the reason anything he'd done had meaning. He began to write again, his pen gliding slowly across the paper. "The world measures worth in the wrong currency," he wrote. "We celebrate the visible, but it's the unseen who build the foundation beneath every achievement. The bodyguard who stands in silence, the nurse who stays through the night, the janitor who sweeps before dawn, they're the true backbone of everything we admire." He paused, the weight of those words pressing on him. He thought of Logan again, not just as the man who had saved his life, but as the man who had reminded him of something deeper. Logan's dance wasn't about performance. It was about defiance, about saying that broken doesn't mean finished. Keanu leaned back, looking around the room. On the table beside him sat his phone, still buzzing occasionally with notifications, headlines, mentions, tags. He glanced at the screen. One photo had already gone viral. The image of him and Logan backstage, hands clasped, both smiling through tears. The caption beneath it read, "Keanu Reeves reunites with former bodyguard at dance event. His message brings the crowd to tears." He exhaled softly. "The world loves the story," he murmured. "But they'll forget the man if I let them." He picked up his pen again. It's not enough to remember him in passing. People like Logan deserve visibility, not sympathy. Respect, not pity. As the clock ticked past midnight, Keanu began outlining an idea that had been forming since he'd left the event. A project, a documentary maybe, or a foundation that would tell the stories of those who worked behind the spotlight. Not just security personnel, but every quiet professional who gave their strength to make others shine. He wrote, "I want to build something that honors the unseen. A platform to share their stories, to let people see that dignity doesn't live in fame, it lives in devotion." He imagined a name, the Quiet Guardians. It felt right, simple, honest. He smiled faintly and continued, "This isn't about charity, it's about gratitude. It's about saying thank you to the ones who never asked to be thanked." The words flowed faster now, emotion guiding his hand. He wrote about the kind of man Logan had been, how he never complained, never sought attention, how he always moved with purpose. Keanu realized that Logan's humility had changed him once before, and tonight it had done it again. When he finally set down the pen, the notebook was half full. He read the last line he'd written. "Maybe courage isn't about how loud we rise, but how quietly we keep standing." Keanu closed the notebook and leaned back in his chair. Outside, dawn had begun to brush the horizon with pale light. He took one last look out the window, whispered a quiet thank you into the morning air, and smiled. Tomorrow he would call Logan, not to talk about the past, but to ask for his help, because this time they would build something together. By sunrise, the world already knew his name. Logan Pierce, the quiet man who had walked on stage to laughter and walked off to thunderous applause, was suddenly everywhere. Clips from Beat Rebirth flooded the internet. His hesitant first steps, the transformation in his movements, and Keanu Reeves's powerful words at the end were shared across every platform. Within hours, hashtags began trending worldwide. Number Guard Dancer, number Courage is coming back, number Logan and Keanu. The moment was replayed on morning talk shows, reaction videos, and news segments. The image of Keanu clapping in the crowd and shouting encouragement became the centerpiece of headlines that read, "Keanu Reeves honors former bodyguard in emotional dance. Comeback." Across social media, millions watched and rewatched the scene. Some were drawn by curiosity, others by nostalgia. But what held them was the authenticity. It wasn't staged. It wasn't part of a promotion or film. It was a moment of real human connection, and the world was hungry for that. Comment sections overflowed with emotion. A veteran wrote, "This hit me hard. I lost my purpose when I came home. But seeing this man find his again gave me hope." A young dancer posted, "I laughed at first when he walked out, but then I saw myself in him. The fear, the hesitation. He reminded me why I dance." TV networks scrambled to book interviews with both men. The organizers of Beat Rebirth found themselves bombarded with calls from journalists wanting every detail of the night. The event's ticket sales for the next season tripled within 24 hours. Meanwhile, Logan woke up to a phone vibrating endlessly on his nightstand. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, thousands of notifications. He sat up, squinting at the glow of the screen. His name was trending. His face was on national headlines. He scrolled through the posts in disbelief. Every comment was filled with praise, encouragement, and tears. People were calling him an inspiration. But Logan didn't feel inspired. He felt exposed. He got out of bed, poured himself a cup of black coffee, and sat by the small window of his apartment. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual noise. But inside, everything felt strangely quiet. His heart was still trying to catch up with what had happened. He turned on the TV out of habit, only to see his own face appear on a morning show. The host spoke animatedly, replaying the clip. What started as laughter turned into one of the most emotional comebacks of the year. And the man cheering him on? None other than Keanu Reeves. Logan shook his head, running a hand over his face. "Unbelievable," he muttered. The man who had spent 2 years trying to be invisible had become impossible to miss. He switched off the TV and stared at the silent screen for a long time. "I didn't dance for fame," he whispered. "I just wanted to feel alive again." By midday, reporters were waiting outside the studio where Logan had once swept floors. News vans lined the curb, cameras pointed at the glass doors. Inside, the young dancers crowded around their phones, watching their mentor become a global headline. The studio owner called him 3 times that morning. "Logan, you've got to come see this. People are sending donations. Parents are signing their kids up just because you used to teach here." But Logan didn't answer. He stayed inside his apartment, blinds half drawn, his phone buzzing endlessly. His life had changed overnight, and he wasn't sure how to handle it. He had spent years fading into the background, and now the world was calling his name. In the middle of all the noise, an alert popped up on his phone, a message from Keanu. It wasn't long, but it carried the quiet strength that defined the man. "You did something powerful last night. The world saw what I've always known. Let's talk soon." Logan smiled faintly. For the first time that morning, he exhaled fully. The chaos outside no longer felt like a storm. It felt like recognition, and somehow, that made the noise bearable. Across the city, in a different hotel suite, Keanu sat with his publicist and assistant as they reviewed the tidal wave of attention. His team wanted to issue a formal press release, maybe even schedule an interview. Keanu disagreed. "No PR," he said quietly. "No spin, just truth." He opened his notebook, the same one he'd written in the night before, and tore out a page. He handed it to his assistant and said, "This is all I want to say." By the afternoon, his handwritten statement appeared on his verified accounts. It read, "He once caught me when I fell. Last night he caught himself. What you saw on that stage wasn't a performance, it was courage. We all fall. What matters is how we rise." The post spread faster than anyone expected. Within minutes, news outlets quoted it in headlines. Fans shared it by the millions. Celebrities commented, calling it the most heartfelt statement they'd seen all year. Even people who had no interest in dancing or Hollywood shared it as a reminder that it's never too late to begin again. One video compilation went viral, a montage of Logan's dance set to Keanu's words. The clip ended with the 2 men embracing backstage, the image freezing as the music swelled. The final line on the screen read, "You're never too old to start over." The hashtag number "Courage is Coming Back" reached global status. That night, Logan sat on his couch, scrolling through the comments, overwhelmed by what he saw. Messages poured in from around the world. Retired athletes, single parents, veterans, people who had lost jobs, relationships, hope. They all said the same thing. His story gave them strength to try again. He set the phone down and closed his eyes, breathing deeply. It wasn't about fame. It never had been. It was about being seen, not as a hero, but as a man who refused to stay down. For the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. He didn't feel forgotten. Outside, the city lights flickered in the window reflection, like applause that never stopped. Somewhere out there, Keanu Reeves was smiling too, because the world had finally met the man he had known all along. The following week, Logan's world continued to spin faster than he could comprehend. The story hadn't slowed down. It had only grown. Every morning, new interviews, new mentions, and new headlines appeared. His inbox overflowed with messages from strangers, thanking him for reminding them that second chances were possible. But amid all the chaos, one email stood out. It wasn't flashy or formal. The subject line read simply, "An opportunity to help." It came from a nonprofit arts foundation based in San Diego. Logan clicked it, expecting another media request, but as he read, his breath caught. The foundation specialized in using art and movement therapy to help veterans and trauma survivors rebuild their confidence and connection with their bodies. The message explained that they had seen the viral video, researched his background, and wanted to offer him a position leading a new workshop movement-based therapy for veterans with PTSD. He read it twice, maybe 3 times, just to be sure he hadn't misread the words. His fingers trembled as he scrolled to the bottom where the director had written, "We don't need a professional choreographer. We need someone who understands what it means to fight through pain and keep moving." "That's you." Logan leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. The hum of the city outside faded. His apartment was quiet except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. The idea sounded impossible. Him, a teacher? He hadn't even considered himself a dancer until weeks ago. For a long time, he didn't move. The memory of his past failures pressed heavy on him. What if he wasn't good enough? What if he couldn't connect with them? He'd spent years hiding from the world. What right did he have to stand in front of others now and claim he could help them heal? His phone buzzed, breaking his thoughts. The screen lit up with a name that made him pause. Keanu Reeves. He hesitated before answering. "Hey," he said softly. Keanu's voice on the other end was calm and warm. "Hey, brother. You've been getting a lot of attention lately." "Yeah," Logan said with a tired laugh. "Feels strange. Not sure I deserve it." Keanu chuckled. "You're the only one who thinks that." There was a short pause before he continued. "I heard about the offer from the foundation. They reached out to me for a reference." Logan froze. "They did?" "Of course," Keanu said. "They wanted to know if you were the real deal. I told them you were more than that." Logan laughed nervously. "You shouldn't have done that. What if I let them down?" "You won't," Keanu said gently. "You've been training for this your whole life, you just didn't know it." Logan went quiet. His throat tightened. "I'm not sure I'm ready," he whispered. "They don't need perfection," Keanu said. "They need you." The words sank deep. Logan closed his eyes, letting the silence stretch between them. He could hear sincerity in Keanu's tone, the same steady conviction that had guided him years ago. The city buzzed faintly through his open window, a low hum beneath Keanu's steady voice. He wanted to believe him, but the doubts still circled like ghosts. "I don't know, man," he said finally. "I'm just me. I don't have the training. I'm no therapist." Keanu's tone didn't change. "They have therapists. They just don't have you. These men and women, they've seen the worst parts of life. They don't need someone to fix them. They need someone who understands what it's like to get back up when it would be easier to stay down." Logan rubbed his face, trying to hold himself together. "You really think I could make a difference?" Keanu paused before answering. "You already did. You just didn't notice." That stage wasn't about dancing. It was about showing the world what resilience looks like. Now, you get to show it to people who really need it. The words struck deep, quiet, but undeniable. Logan felt the tension in his chest ease just a little. His voice softened. "You always did have a way of making things sound simple." Keanu laughed gently. "That's because it is simple. You've already done the hard part. You found your rhythm again. Now it's time to help others find theirs." For the first time in years, Logan didn't argue. He sat there, breathing quietly, thinking about the long nights he'd spent feeling useless, the endless days when he thought he had nothing left to give. Maybe this was why he'd survived the accident. Maybe the pain had been leading him somewhere all along. He looked down at the open email again, his reflection faint in the laptop screen. He imagined the veterans sitting in a small gym or studio, uncertain, maybe broken in their own ways. He imagined teaching them not perfect steps, but motion, itself reminding them that movement meant life. "I'll do it." Keanu didn't respond at first, then said softly, "Good. I was hoping you'd say that." Logan laughed under his breath, his voice unsteady. "You knew I'd cave." "I knew you'd remember who you were," Keanu said. "I'll come visit the first day, if that's all right. I think those guys would like to meet the man who showed the world how to start again." Logan felt the tears come before he could stop them. "You still know how to ruin a man's composure, you know that?" Keanu chuckled. "I'll take the blame." They stayed on the line for a few more minutes, not saying much, just sharing the quiet, the way brothers might after a long battle. When they finally hung up, Logan sat there, staring at the email. He clicked reply, typed 3 words, and hit send. "I accept. Thank you." As he leaned back in his chair, the weight that had followed him for 15 years began to lift. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a man who had lost his purpose. He felt like a man who had finally found where he belonged. The old gym smelled faintly of rubber mats and coffee. The walls were painted a dull beige, and the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt alive. Folding chairs lined one wall, and a speaker sat in the corner, humming quietly with soft instrumental music. Logan Pierce stood at the center of the room, dressed in a faded gray t-shirt and loose black pants. His hands were slightly sweaty, his stomach tight with nerves. 6 veterans stood in front of him, men and women of different ages, shapes, and backgrounds, all carrying something invisible behind their eyes. Some leaned on canes. Others shifted uncomfortably, uncertain of why they were here. A few crossed their arms, guarded and skeptical. Logan looked at them, then smiled gently. "You don't have to call this dancing," he said. "We're not here to look good. We're here to move again. That's it." A small laugh rippled through the group, easing the tension slightly. He started simple, slow stretches, breathing exercises, easy steps in time with the music. The veterans followed awkwardly at first. One man, tall and broad-shouldered, moved stiffly, wincing with every bend. A woman in her 40s muttered under her breath, "This feels ridiculous." Logan nodded toward her and said softly, "Yeah, it does. But so does standing still when you're meant to move." That drew another small laugh. Slowly, the atmosphere began to shift. The music helped a steady rhythm, low and warm. The sound filled the room like a heartbeat. Logan guided them gently, showing them how to find balance through breath, how to let motion replace thought. He didn't bark instructions or count beats. He spoke like someone reminding them of something they'd forgotten. "Don't think about what it looks like," he said. "Just feel it. Your body already knows how to move. You just stopped trusting it for a while." The group loosened up gradually. Shoulders dropped, arms swayed. One man even cracked a smile. Logan moved among them, adjusting stances, offering encouragement. The way he spoke carried a kind of quiet authority earned, not forced. After a while, he paused the music. "I used to guard people for a living," he told them. "I thought that meant keeping danger out, but I learned something recently. What we really need guarding from most is ourselves." The words hung in the air. A few nodded silently, understanding in their eyes. Logan smiled, turned the music back on, and began to move again, slower this time, inviting them to follow. As they did, something changed. The stiffness in the room melted into rhythm. The group began to mirror him. Imperfect, but sincere. Their movements weren't graceful, but They were real. And for the first time since arriving, no one looked down or away. Minutes passed like seconds. The music played on, calm but steady, the kind of melody that pulled people inward. The veterans started to breathe in sync without realizing it. One of them, a younger man named Travis, who had barely spoken since arriving, suddenly began moving with surprising ease. His steps were small, uncertain at first, but then smoother, like he'd remembered something buried deep. Logan noticed and nodded. "That's it," he said quietly. "Don't force it. Just let it happen." Another man, older and heavyset, stopped mid-step and said gruffly, "I don't think I'm doing it right." Logan smiled. "There's no wrong way to move. The only mistake is standing still." That line hit the room like a gentle spark. One of the women laughed softly, shaking her head. "If that's the rule, I've been wrong for 10 years. Logan stepped beside her and moved with her, matching her rhythm. "Then today's a start," he said. Little by little, the tension began to fade from the room. Shoulders loosened. Laughter grew louder. The veterans began watching each other, encouraging small victories, a full turn, a stretch without wincing, a step taken with confidence. The awkwardness of the first few minutes had transformed into something else, something that felt like life returning to tired bones. As the music shifted into a slower tempo, Logan spoke again, his voice low but strong. "Every one of you has carried something heavy, pain, fear, memories that don't fade. You can't erase that, but you can learn to carry it differently. That's what this is. Movement is how we let the weight change shape." No one spoke. They just kept moving, slower now, more thoughtful. A few eyes glistened. The room was filled with something unspoken, but deeply shared. When the music faded to silence, Logan stood still, hands on his hips, breathing heavily, but smiling. "That's enough for today," he said. "You all did better than you think." For a few seconds, no one clapped or spoke. Then, one by one, they began to applaud. It wasn't polite applause, it was real, honest. A few even whistled. Logan blinked, caught off guard, then laughed softly and bowed his head. As the veterans gathered their things, several stopped to shake his hand or pat his shoulder. The younger man, Travis, lingered by the door. "Hey, coach," he said shyly. "You gonna be here next week?" Logan smiled. "Yeah, kid. I'll be here." Travis nodded. "Good, 'cause this actually helped." When the last of them had left, the room was quiet again. Logan stayed standing in the middle of the gym, looking around at the scuffed floors, the folding chairs, the dim lights. It wasn't a stage, but it felt just as sacred. Outside the gym door, a shadow moved. Keanu stood in the hallway, hands in his jacket pockets, watching through the narrow glass pane. He hadn't said he was coming. He hadn't told anyone. But there he was, smiling faintly, as he watched Logan help others find their rhythm the same way he had found his. When Logan finally turned off the lights and stepped into the hall, he noticed Keanu leaning against the wall. For a second, neither said a word. Then Keanu nodded once and said quietly, "You found it." Logan's expression softened. "Yeah," he said. "Guess I did." Keanu clapped him gently on the shoulder. "Told you they needed you." Logan smiled, eyes shining. "And I needed them." They walked out together into the night, their footsteps in rhythm, silent but sure. A few weeks later, as Logan's new program began to flourish, the world's fascination with his story continued to grow. The viral video had sparked conversations far beyond the entertainment world. Veterans groups, mental health advocates, and community centers began citing Logan's story as a symbol of second chances. Every major outlet wanted to cover it, but most focused on one question: why had Keanu Reeves been there that night, and what did it mean to him? Eventually, a respected journalist from a national news network managed to secure an interview. The segment was scheduled to air on a Sunday evening. framed as a discussion about ordinary heroes in extraordinary moments. Keanu agreed, on one condition, that the story remain about Logan, not himself. The studio was quiet when he arrived. No entourage, no stylists, just him in a plain black jacket and jeans. The interviewer, a calm, thoughtful woman in her 40s named Dana, greeted him warmly and led him to the calm, small set. Cameras adjusted, microphones clipped, lights dimmed to a soft glow. As they settled, Dana smiled. "Mr. Reeves, thank you for joining us. I think everyone in the country has seen the video by now. Logan's performance, your words, that moment backstage. It struck a chord with millions. Why do you think that is?" Keanu took a moment before answering, eyes thoughtful. "Because it was real," he said simply. "No script, no spotlight. Just a man rediscovering himself. People connect to that kind of honesty." Dana nodded. "It's rare to see something so genuine. When you shouted encouragement from the audience, you changed the tone of the entire night. Did you plan to be there?" He smiled faintly. "No. I heard about the event from a friend and decided to stop by quietly. I had no idea Logan would be performing. When I saw him step out on that stage, I didn't recognize him right away. But then he moved, and I knew. You don't forget someone who once threw himself in front of a car to save you." Dana leaned forward. "So this was your former bodyguard?" "Yes," Keanu said. "He protected me years ago on a film set, took the hit that should have been mine. He didn't just save my life, he carried that moment for years afterward." What happened to him afterward? It wasn't fair. Life forgot about him, but he didn't forget who he was. That's what that dance meant. Dana's expression softened. "You've played a lot of heroes on screen, but it sounds like Logan might have been one in real life." Keanu smiled gently. "He taught me what real bravery looks like. It's not fighting off danger, it's showing up when you've been written off. It's standing in front of a crowd that doesn't believe in you and saying, 'I still have something left.'" The studio went quiet for a moment, even the crew holding their breath. The sincerity in his voice carried more power than any performance could. Dana took a deep breath, visibly moved. "That's an extraordinary way to put it," she said. "How contreely, makely age, bast, and age, bast. You've worked with so many people over the years, actors, directors, leaders. But the way you talk about Logan, it sounds like he changed your perspective." Keanu nodded slowly. "He did. I've met a lot of people who chase greatness. But Logan never chased anything except purpose. The night he stepped on that stage, he reminded everyone, including me, that value doesn't disappear just because the world stops watching you." Dana glanced at her notes, then looked up again. "You could have made this about you. A global star supporting his former bodyguard. Most would have turned it into a spotlight moment. But instead, you've kept the attention on him. Why?" Keanu smiled modestly. "Because I already have more attention than anyone needs. Logan's story represents thousands of people who never get theirs. Security guards, construction workers, custodians, nurses, veterans people, who do their jobs with dignity and never get applause. Logan just happened to step into the light long enough for people to notice. The rest of them deserve to be seen too." Dana nodded thoughtfully. "You said something in your written statement that resonated with many viewers. He once caught me when I fell. Last night, he caught himself. What did you mean by that?" Keanu leaned back slightly, his eyes softening. "I meant that he didn't need anyone to save him this time. He found the strength to stand on his own again. And in doing that, he reminded all of us that it's never too late to get back up. Sometimes, we need to fall to find out who we are without the armor." The interviewer paused, giving space for the weight of his words. Behind the cameras, even the crew members stood silent. After a moment, Dana asked, "Have you stayed in touch with him since that night?" Keanu's smile widened. "Yeah, We talk every week. He's running classes now for veterans and trauma survivors. I stopped by last week to see one of his sessions. You should have seen those men and women people who thought they couldn't move anymore, dancing like they were reclaiming their lives. He's doing something real, something lasting. That's beautiful, Dana said softly. Do you think stories like his can change the way people see ordinary work? Ordinary courage? I hope so, Keanu replied. Because there's nothing ordinary about surviving, about rebuilding. Everyone's fighting a battle you don't see. If people watch Logan's story and think, maybe I can start again too, then we've done something worthwhile. The interview ended quietly. Without fanfare, Keanu stood, shook Dana's hand, and thanked the crew before leaving the studio the same way he came unnoticed except for the silence he left behind. When the segment aired that evening, viewers across the country stopped what they were doing to listen. They saw not a celebrity speaking about success, but a man using his voice to lift another. Within hours, thousands of comments flooded the network's page. Veterans, security guards, janitors, and workers of every kind, sharing their hidden talents and untold stories. And in living rooms across America, people began to understand what Keanu had meant all along. Real heroes rarely stand in the spotlight, they hold it for others. The community gym was packed from wall to wall. Rows of folding chairs filled the space, with families, veterans, and local reporters all waiting in quiet anticipation. Banners hung from the rafters that read, "Healing Through Movement, a Veterans Showcase." The smell of popcorn and coffee drifted through the air, mixing with the faint sound of sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Logan stood backstage, his hands pressed together, breathing deeply. His heart raced not from fear, but from meaning. In front of him, his class stretched and adjusted. Their uniforms, simple black shirts with white lettering that read, "Move to Heal." Some of them still wore knee braces. Others carried visible scars. But tonight, every one of them stood taller. "Remember?" Logan said softly, his voice calm but firm. "We're not performing. We're telling our story. Don't dance for the audience, dance for the person you used to be." The group nodded, their eyes steady. The lights dimmed. A hush fell across the crowd as the announcer's voice came over the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Phoenix Movement." The first notes of music began slow, deliberate piano chords that echoed through the gym. Logan stepped onto the floor first, moving with quiet control. Every motion told of something lost and something rediscovered. Then, one by one, the veterans joined him. A dozen bodies, different in age and form, moved in unison. The dance began as a story of struggle. Sharp movements, hesitant steps, hands reaching for something unseen. Each performer carried emotion in their gestures, a trembling hand, a bowed head, a sudden pause. The crowd felt it deeply. As the rhythm built, the tone shifted. The piano was joined by drums, then a faint violin. The movements became more fluid, more confident. Veterans began mirroring one another's steps, building trust through motion. One man lifted his arm high, and another mirrored it instantly, symbolizing connection. In the third sequence, Logan guided them through synchronized turns and slow kneels, his eyes steady on the rhythm. The dance wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was raw. It spoke to every soul in the audience. In the front row, Keanu Reeves watched quietly, his hands clasped in his lap. No cameras, no press, just a simple seat among the people. As the song swelled, he began to clap slowly in rhythm, not to draw attention, but to encourage the movement, to give it heartbeat. The veterans followed Logan into the final sequence, a blend of military precision and gentle flow. Every step carried meaning. Every face reflected healing. The music climbed toward its crescendo, faster now, more alive. Then the beat dropped, and silence followed. Logan stepped forward, sweat glistening, chest heaving. He looked around at his team men and women who had once doubted themselves, now standing like champions. He turned toward the crowd and raised the microphone. His voice was calm, but carried through every corner of the gym. "No one really leaves the stage of life," he said, "as long as we dare to come back." For a heartbeat, the entire gym went silent. Logan's words hung in the air like a bell ringing through the stillness. Then, slowly, the audience began to rise. First, one person, then another, until every seat was empty and every hand was clapping. The applause grew into a roar that shook the rafters. Logan stood frozen, humbled. Around him, the veterans smiled through tears. Some covered their faces, others hugged one another. For them, this wasn't applause for a performance. It was recognition for survival. Each clap felt like an acknowledgement of everything they had endured and everything they had reclaimed. Keanu stood too, his hands coming together in slow, steady rhythm. His eyes glistened as he looked toward the group in the center of the gym. He wasn't clapping for fame or for spectacle. He was clapping for courage, for every person who had thought they were finished but had chosen to begin again. The MC tried to speak over the cheers, but his voice broke with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "the Phoenix Movement." The veterans bowed together, Logan at their center, his chest rising and falling as if his heart could barely contain what he felt. From the back of the gym, children ran forward holding small flags, waving them proudly. Parents wiped their eyes. Reporters stood still, forgetting their cameras for a moment, simply taking in what they were witnessing. It was no longer an event. It was a collective moment of grace. As the applause continued, Logan caught sight of Keanu near the back, standing with his hands still in his pockets, smiling quietly. Their eyes met across the crowded room. It was the same look they had shared all those months ago, the look that said, "We made it." When the crowd finally began to settle, Logan gestured for the microphone again. "You know," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I used to think that getting hurt meant the story was over. But I've learned that sometimes the best chapters come after the fall. These men and women here, they taught me that every step we take is proof we're still alive." The audience responded with another wave of applause, softer this time, filled with warmth instead of noise. Keanu lowered his gaze for a moment, emotion tightening his throat. He clapped one final time, then slipped quietly toward the exit. He didn't need to stay for interviews or photographs. This was Logan's night. As the lights dimmed and the crowd began to disperse, Logan turned back to his group. The veterans surrounded him, still smiling, still trembling with the energy of what they had just accomplished. One of them, Travis, the young man who had once asked if Logan would be there next week, stepped forward and said, "Coach, that was the first time I felt like myself again." Logan placed a hand on his shoulder and smiled. "Then we're doing it right." Outside, under the cool evening air, the sound of applause still echoed faintly from the gym. Keanu paused before walking to his car and whispered, "You did it, brother." And somewhere inside, Logan knew he wasn't just dancing anymore. He was living. The world looked different a year later. What had started as one small class in a forgotten gym had grown into a statewide movement. Logan's dance therapy program, now officially called the Phoenix Movement Initiative, had opened centers across California, from San Diego to Sacramento. Veterans, trauma survivors, and even ordinary civilians joined to rediscover rhythm, connection, and courage. The foundation's headquarters sat inside a repurposed community center in Los Angeles. The walls were covered in photographs, images of men and women mid-step, laughing, stretching, lifting one another. In the main lobby hung a bronze plaque with an inscription that caught the light from the morning sun. Courage is stepping out of the past. Inspired by Keanu Reeves. Every visitor paused to read it. Logan had insisted on the wording himself, saying it wasn't about dedication, it was about truth. The one-year anniversary event drew a full crowd. Local officials attended, reporters filled the back rows, and families gathered with small flags and handmade posters. But Logan didn't see it as a ceremony. For him, it was a reunion. A chance to see the people who had learned, healed, and grown beside him. Backstage, the veterans from his first class stood waiting, chatting softly. Some had since become instructors themselves. Others had found new jobs, new passions. All carried that same sense of quiet pride. Logan straightened his tie, a rare sight, and glanced at the stage where a banner hung. 1 year of movement, 1 lifetime of change. He smiled. The announcer's voice echoed through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder of the Phoenix Movement Initiative, Mr. Logan Pierce. Applause filled the air. Logan stepped out, waving modestly as he approached the microphone. I never imagined we'd come this far, he began. When we started, I thought it would be 1 small class in 1 small gym. But what I found was something bigger, something stronger than pain or fear. I found people who refused to stop moving. The audience clapped warmly. He continued, his tone heartfelt. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Our stories don't end when we fall. They end only when we stop getting back up. Every step you take, no matter how small, keeps the story alive. The crowd responded with another round of applause, but Logan barely noticed. His eyes had drifted toward the back of the room, where a familiar figure stood quietly against the wall dressed in black, hands in his jacket pockets, head slightly bowed. Keanu Reeves. He hadn't told Logan he was coming. No cameras followed him, no entourage waited nearby. He stood there like any other guest, blending in with the crowd. Logan's smile deepened. Without hesitation, he lifted a hand and gestured toward him. The spotlight shifted slightly, illuminating the back row. And there's a man out there, Logan said into the microphone, his voice breaking slightly, who reminded me what courage really means. The audience turned to look, whispers rippling through the crowd. For a moment, Keanu froze as dozens of heads turned his way. He gave a small nod, almost shyly, and raised one hand in a humble wave. The crowd erupted into applause. Some cheered his name, but most clapped for what he represented, the quiet force behind the movement that had changed so many lives. Logan spoke again, his tone gentle but resolute. He once told me something that never left my mind. He said, courage isn't loud. It's the quiet decision to stand up after years of sitting out. Everything you see here today started with that truth. Keanu smiled faintly, his eyes glistening. He shook his head as if to deflect the attention, but Logan wouldn't let him hide this time. Keanu, he called out, you don't get to stay in the back tonight. Come up here. The crowd cheered louder. Keanu hesitated, then laughed under his breath and began walking down the aisle. Every person he passed reached out to shake his hand, clap his shoulder, or whisper a thank you. When he finally reached the stage, Logan met him halfway and pulled him into a firm embrace. The audience rose to their feet, the sound of applause swelling once more. Cameras flashed, though neither man seemed to notice. It wasn't a celebrity moment, it was a human one. When the noise subsided, Keanu leaned toward the microphone, his voice low and warm. I don't deserve this kind of attention, he said. I just showed up that night to support a friend, but he's the one who turned a single act of courage into something that helps people heal. I'm just grateful I got to see it happen. Logan smiled and shook his head. You've never been just anything. You've been the spark behind all of this. Keanu chuckled softly. Then I guess we're both proof that sparks can start wildfires if you let them. The crowd laughed and clapped again, but beyond the applause, something deeper filled the air. Respect. connection, and the unspoken understanding that every person in that room had witnessed a story of redemption come full circle. The rest of the ceremony moved forward with music, short speeches, and stories from those who had gone through the program. Veterans spoke about regaining confidence, parents shared how movement had helped their children overcome trauma, and volunteers described how the program had restored their sense of purpose. At the end of the event, Logan and Keanu stood side by side near the plaque. The hall was nearly empty now, just the echo of fading footsteps and quiet conversation. Logan looked up at the bronze inscription and said softly, "I never thought my name would be connected to something that actually mattered." Keanu smiled. "It always was. The world just needed to see it." They stood there in silence for a long moment, the late afternoon sunlight reflecting off the plaque, casting both their shadows across the floor. Logan finally turned, extending his hand. Keanu shook it firmly, then pulled him into one last embrace. No cameras, no noise. Just two men who had kept their promises. And as they parted, both knew that what began as one man's comeback had become a movement far greater than either could have imagined. The morning sun streamed softly through the wide windows of the training hall. Music drifted from a nearby speaker, slow, steady, full of warmth. The veterans moved in rhythm across the polished floor, their faces calm, their steps synchronized. Logan stood in the middle of them, no longer the uncertain man who had once doubted his place in the world. His movements were graceful, measured, filled with quiet confidence. Around him, laughter echoed. Someone stumbled and burst out laughing, and soon the rest joined in. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about presence. The air was thick with energy, with life itself. Every turn, every breath, every movement was proof that healing was happening not in theory, but in motion. Keanu stood by the doorway, leaning against the frame. He wasn't there to be noticed. He never needed to be. He simply watched as Logan guided his students through another session, the sound of their shoes brushing against the floor, blending with the faint hum of music. His eyes softened. This was what purpose looked like: quiet, consistent, unglamorous, but pure. A younger instructor motioned for Logan to take a break, but he shook his head with a smile. "I'll rest when they do," he said. The others laughed and kept going. Keanu took a slow breath, the kind that fills your chest and settles deep inside. His thoughts drifted, steady and reflective, as if each moment in the room had its own heartbeat. "Sometimes," his voice echoed quietly in his mind, "the strongest people aren't the ones in front of the camera, but the ones who kept it safe long, enough for others to shine." He watched Logan spin gently to the rhythm, guiding one of the newer participants through a turn. Their hands moved in perfect coordination, one leading, one following, neither dominating, both learning from each other. It was a small act, but it carried the weight of a lifetime of lessons. The music slowed. Logan looked up, meeting Keanu's gaze through the soft morning light. A faint smile passed between them. Simple, wordless, real. Keanu felt something stir in his chest. A quiet kind of pride that didn't need an audience. In that moment, he realized this was the full circle. The protector had become the healer. The man who once stood behind him had stepped fully into his own light. The music faded to silence, and the veterans clapped lightly, laughing as they caught their breath. Logan nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "That's it for today," he said. "Remember, it's not about how far you move, it's that you keep moving." Keanu smiled to himself, the words echoing deeply. It was the perfect ending to a story that was still being written. The screen slowly faded to black before opening again on the familiar image of Logan in the studio. The light poured in through the high windows, warm and golden, painting the room in hues of life and renewal. The veterans moved in rhythm around him, laughing and cheering as they practiced their routines. The sound of sneakers sliding across the floor mixed with the faint beat of the music, creating a kind of quiet joy that filled the air. Logan walked between them, adjusting postures, encouraging hesitant steps, smiling when someone broke into laughter after a stumble. There was no stage, no audience, only motion, only life. His voice could be heard over the music, calm and steady. "Don't worry about looking right," he said. "Just focus on feeling free." The scene slowed. The music softened into a gentle piano melody. The camera focused on Logan's face as he looked around the room, his eyes reflecting pride and peace. He moved with his students, matching their rhythm, guiding them through each step. His movements were no longer those of a bodyguard or performer. They were the movements of a teacher, a healer, a man who had found purpose again. Then, Keanu's voice began to speak over the images, quiet and reflective. "Sometimes, the strongest people aren't the ones in front of the camera," he said, "but the ones who kept it safe long enough for others to shine." As his words played, the footage shifted to moments of Logan laughing with his students, clapping along with the beat, helping a young veteran take his first step without crutches. Each image captured a story without words. The music rose gently, blending with the sound of steady breathing and the soft rhythm of feet moving in time. Keanu's voice continued, deeper now, filled with emotion. Courage doesn't always mean charging forward. Sometimes it means returning, coming back to the places where you fell, standing there again and saying, "I'm still here." That's what Logan did. And through him, so many others remembered that it's never too late to begin again. The screen cut to a slow-motion shot of Logan turning toward the camera, smiling as the light caught his face. Behind him, the veterans clapped in rhythm, their movements unified, their energy unbreakable. Keanu's voice softened. He used to guard lives. Now, he helps others guard their hope. And in a world that forgets too easily, that kind of strength matters more than ever. The piano swelled into a gentle crescendo. The camera lingered one last time on Logan, laughing as he high-fived one of the younger veterans. His joy was contagious, genuine, unfiltered. The music quieted, and Keanu spoke once more, his tone turning from reflection to invitation. "If you've ever felt like your time has passed," he said, "remember Logan. Remember that courage doesn't fade, it waits. It waits for the moment you decide to rise again." The final image froze on Logan smiling at his students, the sunlight haloing him in gold. The words appeared across the screen. "It's never too late to return to the stage of life." A brief pause followed before Keanu's voice returned one last time, soft but certain. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might need that reminder tonight. The music swelled once more and faded into silence.